Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Draw. I'm Kevin Lawler, and I'm recording in Denver, Colorado, Thursday night, late, the Thursday before the French Open starts. So we have the draws out, we have pricing out. It's a Grand Slam. It's the first Grand Slam for Inside the Draw, which is exciting. Launched this podcast at the start of the clay season, the week of, I think, Bogota and a couple of smaller tournaments like that. So Marrakesh. So yeah, here we are all the way through the clay season, through Madrid, through Monte Carlo, through Rome, and this week where we still have some tournaments happening at the moment, and obviously qualies are happening for the French. But the draws came out today, and we've got pricing for men's and women's. I've decided I'm going to split two pods. It's too much. Like last week, the episode that I recorded ended up being an hour and 4 minutes, and I think people in 2026 don't want to listen to anyone talking for an hour and 4 minutes. So I'm gonna try and keep a focus on keeping it shorter and snappier. So we're going to do a women's one today, and then I'm going to do a men's one tomorrow. So I have a women's preview here with the bets for the ladies, and then tomorrow we'll do the same on the men's side, a men's preview with the bets for the men. Just before we jump into the draw, I just wanted to take a quick look at where we are with some of the bets and some of the tournaments for this week that's still in progress, and then one or two other minor things ahead of the French Open kicking off on Sunday, I believe. So overall, I think this week it hasn't been great. One or two bets still going that are in a nice spot, but overall, a couple of things that just didn't work out. I think in one or two cases, maybe unlucky. Um, on the right horses, on the right prices, just didn't get the breaks, and that's fine. And then one or two others that I just think I got wrong. I think I got the Casper Ruud one wrong, but I maintain that I'm right. If Casper Ruud goes and bows out early in Paris, or if he pulls up lame in Paris, or if he's fatigued in a fifth set battle in Paris, I just think it was the wrong move to make it to a Rome final, having gone relatively deep the week before in Madrid, then to make it all the way through the 2 weeks in Rome to a final, lose to Sinner, and then go and play in Geneva when all the other elite players are going to Paris. I still think it was the wrong move. I thought he was going there for a check and he would tank. He hasn't tanked yet, and he's now in the semi-finals against Mariano Navone. Now, Navone is a good player, but the fact that Ruud has persisted for this long in the tournament and he's still going, he's probably at the stage now where, he's so invested in it, he just goes ahead and wins it, which is basically on his racket. The one thing I will say about it is, for anyone who has seen his style of play this week, he's been mad aggressive, like really, really aggressive. I think 70% of the points in his match today were 3 shots or under, which is bananas for a clay match. So he's just, it's serve and first strike, serve and +1. And he's being very aggressive on return as well. So not investing a lot, not moving around a lot. So I guess like that part makes sense. But at the same time, is it better preparation for him to be in Geneva this week, or would it be better preparation to be in Roland Garros and getting acclimated to the conditions and to Chatrier and Longlong and the different courts? I think it's an easy answer, but there we are. So it looks like Ruud's going to go ahead and win there. The one that I mentioned, I mentioned Ignacio Buse in the Hamburg preview. I didn't bet him. I ended up betting my long shot in that top quarter was Vitko Priva instead. Buse has been the one that's come through and taken out some big names. He took out Flavio Ceboli, and then he went on the very next round and took out Jakub Mensik and barely dropped games to Mensik. So he's been flying, and I love Buse. He's a Peruvian. He's an up-and-comer. I've spoken about him a ton of times on this pod, and I really like him, and he's into a semi-finals. I'd love to see him go ahead and win the tournament. I don't think he will, but he's a massive favourite in his semi now. He's playing Alexander Kovacevic tomorrow in the semi, and he's like -400, which actually feels quite short to me. But the other one that I got right in that tournament, I put up Alex de Minaur to go ahead and win his quarter at 4-1, and he's been super. So that price is just inflated. It was a big price, and I said that because he'd gone through with basically back-to-back losses in Madrid and Rome, and he was a top 10 player who's here and who needs to play tennis this week, and he's looked great. He's beaten some real good players, so he's favoured to beat Tommy Paul on the other side of that draw and make the final tomorrow. Laszlo Djere ended up not having to play. Cerundolo, it was Juan Manuel Cerundolo. Juan Manuel withdrew after the Challenger exploits last week, and honestly, it looks like, unfortunately, the Challenger exploits took their toll on Djere as well, which is fair enough. He was a set up against Arthur Rinderknecht, and I think he could have been a break-up too in the second, ended up losing that one. So these things happen. The one that actually annoyed me the most, I would say, this week is Iva Jovic. That draw, like, that was just perfect for her. I said Madison Keys would pull out. Madison Keys did pull out. She just had a beautiful draw lined up. And I don't know, like, Navarro has been struggling so much. Anyone who watches tennis will know how much Emma Navarro has been struggling this season with a ton of different things. And Jovic just went out and she was 5-2 down within about 20 minutes. She got it back on serve but got broken, then won the second set. And I don't know if she tanked the third set or what, but like 6-1. And if I was expecting anyone to be gassed in that match, I would have expected Navarro to be gassed. But I don't know. I don't know if Jovic tried. I don't know if she gave it her all or whatever. But she's gone to Paris now, and Navarro is all the way into the semis. So it's a real sickening one, because I think Jovic was a super price there at the 7-1 for the tournament, and a lovely price to win her quarter. And I also had a lovely bet on Alex de Minaur to win his quarter into Jovic to win her as a double, which would have been nice on top of the de Minaur single. But yeah, Jovic put paid to that. A girl who went really close to the 9-1, I think it was, quarter price was Marie Buzkova. She went off basically a pick'em against Anne Lee in the quarter final, ended up losing, so that's fine. There was the option of cashing out of that one for basically, half of what the win price would have been, but I didn't do it. I don't like really doing that, and I actually thought she had a great chance against Lee, so completely fine with that, and that was a great bet. Just the coin didn't fall the right side. And then obviously the other one that's still going is Rabat, and I think Annalena Kalinina was maybe the first bet I put up on the pod on Sunday. She was 11-1, and then I think before she hit a ball she was into half of that price, and she is minus 120 now to win the tournament. I will be sick if she doesn't win the tournament. Like, she has such a draw ahead of her. She's got Panna Udvardi, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, she's got Panna Udvardi in the semis tomorrow morning. She's minus 300 to win that, and she's beaten her twice in the last 3 months. The last day she played her was also on clay, and she dropped the first set in a tiebreak, and then she beat her love and won very quickly after that and made light work of her. Udvardi, the Hungarian, is pretty good, but yeah, like Kalinina should have too much there. She hasn't dropped a set yet, and I did mention again, her best years are behind her, so she needs to win in straight sets ideally, and she has done all the way through. She's never won a WTA title, so this is like a big deal for Kalinina, and like, you can be guaranteed she's invested here and dying to win this title. The other side of the draw is Petra Marcinko and Jill Teichmann, so Kalinina will be a monstrous favourite in the final if she can get it done tomorrow. So basically my week from last week hinges on Kalinina in Rabat. I'm very confident she'll get it done, but you never know how these things turn out. So there we go. The other thing I wanted to touch on briefly was Alcaraz news, obviously, that came out during the week. Quick sip of tea. Alcaraz pulled out of grass season. He basically said, look, my wrist is not where I need it to be. I'm gone. I'm not playing Queens. I'm not playing Wimbledon. I don't think it's a big shock or surprise with the wrist injury he has. I can't think of a much more vital part of your body than your right wrist for a tennis player. Your back, obviously, and your knees or whatever, but like, your wrist is right up there with everything else. So he's pulled out. I don't think it's a huge price either that we don't see him in the US, or we don't see him before the US Open. There's a chance, obviously, we don't see him again this year, and maybe the Aussie Open will be his comeback in January after like a sustained period out, but hopefully it won't come to that. But in the meantime, I guess what it does mean is that Yannick Sinner goes largely unopposed in the next 2 slams, and the next 2 tournaments for Sinner are 2 slams. It's Wimbledon, it's Roland Garros this week coming, and then it's Wimbledon. He's announced he's not playing a grass court warm-up ahead of Wimbledon, so he's going off minus 300 basically for the French, and he's going to go off. He won't be quite as short as that in Wimbledon. Obviously, you could be more susceptible to a big server on grass, but it's going to take a hell of a performance to beat him if it's not Alcaraz, and nobody has really come close. I could see a Medvedev or somebody like that on grass if he's having a big serving day and playing well and aggressive. I could certainly see that. Shelton has been awful lately, but on grass he's a different monster, and there are some other players like that who will appreciate the surface change for a chance to take on Sinner. So let's see how that one goes, but yeah, Alcaraz out. The last thing before getting on to the ladies French, I really enjoyed the Monfils, a night with Gael Monfils and friends tonight at Roland Garros. The French Federation and Roland Garros, the tournament, put on a nice night for Monfils, a send-off. It's his last ever French Open after basically 2 decades. They gave him a wild card into the main draw, which was lovely. He's revered by the French tennis public and by the fans, and he's been an amazing player. That era of French tennis players, like all the way from Paul-Henri Mathieu and kind of for me, Mika Ludra, he was one of my favorite players. But Gasquet and Songa, Gilles Simon, Mahu, like all of these guys, and Monfils came up playing with those guys, and now he's still playing, and he's still playing with the new generation, Arthur Fils and these boys. So yeah, he's going to be missed and going to be loved. We'll take a look at the men's draw and talk about him maybe a teeny bit tomorrow. But I thought it was really nice. They got all the stars out. Sinner came out, Naomi Osaka. I don't know. I can't remember if Sabalenka was there, but a lot of the big names showed up and played some exhibition doubles and stuff and had fun with the crowd. And it was pretty packed court, I should say, and arena for that. So that was fun today, and I like the way the French Federation did that. All right, without further ado, I did not go to the Masters, by the way. For anyone listening on Spotify, I am wearing a Masters 3/4 zip. One of my best friends did go to the Masters this year and brought me back this 3/4 zip. So there you go. I did not go to the Masters, unfortunately. All right, let's get straight into the draw. I printed off, I never do this anymore, but I printed off the bracket today and brought it home with me. So I have the paper version, which is amazing. I remember years ago printing these out before every slam and like writing in the players' names and trying to make predictions for who was going to win. And yeah, that was always fun. But I haven't done that here, but I have used it for reference of who's playing who and so on. So let's just start off with a quick takeaway and a high level takeaway of the draw first before we go in quarter by quarter and then the bets. And we won't take a ton of time here. The big winner, the overall big winner for me of this draw is Coco Gauff. I think she's got a super draw. I think she's landed exactly where she would have wanted to land. So I guess you're either going to come up against Rybakina or Sabalenka, and I'm not sure that matters a ton at the moment. In general, I would say Sabalenka is the better player there, but she's coming in off back-to-back losses or 2 losses in her last 3, I should say. And then the other main seed in the Gauff quarter, as we're going to get to in a moment, is Amanda Anisimova, and there's a chance that she's just there for the appearance fee and probably isn't going to care too much because it's her clay debut. She hasn't touched the racket this clay season with injury, so her last tournament was Miami. So I think she's landed in a lovely section. Gauff is obviously coming in from a Rome final, and that's the exact way she won. She's the defending champ here in Paris. Like she got to the Rome final last year, lost to Paolini, went on and won Roland Garros. Same thing this year, got to the Roland Garros final, lost to Svitolina, and now I think she's in the driver's seat for Paris. And I think there's an argument, as we'll get through in the draw in a few minutes, I think there's an argument she should be shorter in the outright betting or closer to the favourites anyway. To be honest, I think Sabalenka is very short, and I think Swiatek's price with the draw that she got is horrific. Of all of the big name girls, I would prefer a bet on Gauff than Annie, but I also think she's maybe gonna touch short now that the value has probably gone out of it. So there are some other bets that we'll touch on. But overall, I think Gauff got a lovely draw. I think quarter 1 with Sabalenka is relatively strong. Gauff got a relatively weak quarter, and then the bottom half is loaded. Quarters 3 and 4 are loaded, which we're just about to find out. So let's start with quarter 1. You know what? I have it. I have the paper draw, but I also do like to have the one on the screen in front of me. Let's just bite the bullet and go with it. Okay, Sabalenka. So the main seed in the first quarter is Aryna Sabalenka. She is coming in form that she's not accustomed to over the last couple of seasons. She's coming in having lost 2 of her last 3, which, she's just not used to that. I think the draw, there's a couple of girls in here who can trouble her. Iva Jovic is in there in her section. Naomi Osaka, Victoria Mboko, Madison Keys, Diane Schneider, and Jess Pegula. So household names, depending on how much you're into your tennis, but certainly big names that are going to be capable of troubling Sabalenka. The thing I'll say for Sabalenka as well, she starts off against Jessica Bouzas-Monero, and that's not it's straightforward, but it's not a gimme. It's not a layup where it's she has to show up and she wins. It's not a show up and you win. She'll win, but Bouzas-Monero can certainly play on clay. And then she's also got Dasha Kasakina in there and Sonmez, so also not necessarily gimme. So she'll be tested in the first 3 rounds, but I expect her to come through. And then in her 4th round, that's where it starts to get interesting, and she will play either Iva Jovic or Naomi Osaka, and both have looked good. So Jovic had a round 1. Well, it was her first round loss. It was the second round, but she got a bye in the first one. So she lost to Navarro in Strasbourg, and overall, I think it's been a pretty bad clay season for her compared to the expectations that I and others probably had for her. But Osaka's on the flip of that. Like, I had very low expectations for Naomi Osaka, and she went out and put in really good performances, high level performances in both Rome and Madrid. So she's coming in with very little pressure, I would say, and probably quite a lot of confidence. And that combination makes Naomi Osaka dangerous now. I don't think clay is her best surface, but she can hit through anybody, and she put up a decent match against Sabalenka a couple of weeks ago. So that's not going to be straightforward. But overall, that's the top section of quarter one, and you would expect Sabalenka will, probably get through relatively straightforward first 3 rounds, and then she's into a tough enough round against probably Naomi Osaka, which would be, a box office matchup, probably on Chatrier. So the bottom half of that first quarter then, we've got Victoria Mboko, which I touched on. She's still going in Strasbourg, so she's in a semi-final there and will, quite likely go on and win the tournament. My criticism of her coming into this would have been she's done nothing on clay. But all of a sudden, if she's coming in having won a title on clay and has a bit of confidence, that changes the whole thing, and I think she's a danger, and I think she's a danger to most likely Jess Pegula. One thing I will say is qualifiers haven't been placed yet, so there are some good girls who have come through in the qualies. We do not know yet where they're going to land, so we'll keep an eye on that over the coming days. But I think there's a chance that Mboko could beat Pegula on clay. I was pretty unimpressed with Pegula. That said, Pegula did turn it around a bit in Rome compared to Madrid. Pegula's season from the clay so far, she won in Charleston, then she's kind of poor after that in Madrid, and then she went to a quarter final in Rome where she lost to Iga Świątek. So, I think the bottom half of this, I think the most likely opponent for Sabalenka in a quarter final is either going to be Mboko or Jess Pegula, and probably just at the prices. I think Pegula is around 6-1 for the quarter, and Mboko is about 20-1 for the quarter. So I would certainly prefer to take the upside at the 2.5x price. The other one that I think is interesting here on Mboko, the other point that is interesting on her, I saw last week that she teamed up with Wim Fissette, and that's very interesting, for a couple of reasons. Wim Fissette, spells danger for the most part. He is a coach who has coached some of the best female players in tennis history to Grand Slams or in the vicinity of Grand Slams. Angelique Kerber, Simona Halep, Victoria Azarenka, Naomi Osaka and Iga Świątek. And is it a coincidence that now all of a sudden he's with Victoria Mboko and she's on the precipice of winning her first clay title? Granted, it's Strasbourg. It's not exactly a massive title or anything like that, but she's starting to put together some form, and I think that spells danger for everybody. So it's another reason that I like Victoria Mboko. Wim Fissette is one of the best tennis coaches of the female game. So he's proven it over the years. So that's certainly interesting and caught my attention when I saw it. If I was to have a bet in the first quarter bets, I think the obvious thing for me is that Sabalenka is just an easy swerve. She's about minus 180, and I have less than zero interest in minus 180 to go through that. Gun to head, my bet will be Mboko, but yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I thought Mboko was a much bigger price than I'm seeing now, by the way, so I'm not sure if something happened there or if the prices got cut, but let me just double check what she's at in quarter one. Yeah, she's 9-1 best price, so I'm probably not that interested there. You can get Naomi Osaka 13-1, Jovic, Keys all around 14-1, Dasha Kasatkina 20s and Pegula 7s. Given that Pegula is quite much closer to Mboko than it was when I initially saw it, maybe Pegula is the bet there, but honestly I don't have a massive feel on this. My main opinion is that I need to swerve Sabalenka, so maybe when the qualifiers get placed here a bet becomes more apparent, but for now I'm probably not going to touch anything here. If you want to have a bet, it would just, I would say, get on the other side that Sabalenka's on, because then you've got 4 rounds to potentially get someone to take her out, and it could be Naomi Osaka or Jovic or somebody, but you get the benefit of that by being on the other side. And I think the options have to be either Mboko at 9-1 or Jess Pegula at 7-1, so whatever you prefer there, but I may not have a bet in that one. On to quarter two. Said this in the run-up, but Coco Gauff for me is the very simple choice here, and I think she's got a beautiful draw. I think she's landed in a great spot and has been the overall winner of the draw today. Defending champ, final in Rome last week. She plays fellow American Taylor Townsend, better known for her exploits on a doubles court in round one. I wouldn't be surprised if Townsend pushed her tight. I think they're quite friendly, and Townsend will go in completely loose, nothing to lose, all the pressure in the world on Gauff, but I think she'll be totally fine. Then it's like a qualifier next. She gets a tough enough quarter three, or round three, I guess, with Anastasia Potapova, the most likely opponent. Potapova deserves a hat tip for her clay season so far. She got to a final in Linz, which I was on and put up on the pod at 33-1 plus 3,300. She made a semi-final in Madrid where she entered as a lucky loser after losing in qualifiers, got all the way through to the semis, and then a round of 16 in Rome last week. So she's been solid. She's been better than probably a lot of people would have expected this clay season. So that's going to be a danger for Gauff, but Gauff will have too much for her, would be my view. And Potapova has a great backhand, and I think Gauff has a great backhand, so that'll be a nice matchup to watch. You've got the other kind of names then there who could be a fourth round opponent for Gauff, assuming she gets through there. It's likely to be Anna Kalinskaya, I would say, or either Yulia Putintseva or Camila Osorio. The seed there is Ekaterina Alexandrova, and she's just been like a walking by in an auto swerve every single week. So Kalinskaya got destroyed by Ostapenko in Rome last week, so I don't really have a ton of interest there. So I think the only challenge that's going to come Gauff's way in that, before the quarterfinal is going to be Anastasia Potapova, and I think Gauff will be fine and have too much firepower. I would certainly expect that anyway. And then the bottom half of this is a little bit tougher. There's a couple more big names. You've got Linda Naskova in there. You've got Zhengqin Wen. You've got Elise Mertens, not exactly a big name anymore. Anne Lee, who is going well and playing well the last couple of months. And then Angelina Kalinina, our girl in Rabat this week, is in there. And then Amanda Anisimova. And I just think getting Amanda Anisimova is... that's part of the appeal for Gauff. And Anisimova hasn't touched the racket since Miami. She hasn't touched the racket competitively since Miami. She missed every single clay tournament with injury. I saw her hitting in Roland Garros, and she looks fit, she looks strong, she looks happy. So maybe it'll turn out that she plays herself into form here and is a bit of a danger, but I couldn't do anything but swerve her based on the fact that she hasn't played at all on clay and has no tune-ups. The other thing is, she hasn't done anything on clay in a couple of years. She did make the Roland Garros semi-final back in 2019. That was around the time when we had Ash Barty on tour. Ash Barty won that championship, and she beat my girl in the final, Marketa Vondrousova. I was on Vondrousova that year for the French, and she made it all the way to the final, and I actually thought she was going to beat Barty, but she didn't. She lost to Barty, but Anisimova is, or was that level. I don't know if I would say necessarily her best days are behind her. She still has a chance to have her best days in front of her, but I don't think she's going to do her best work on clay, and I certainly think she needs a tune-up tournament, and she didn't get it. So for me, the easy one there is Gauff. She's plus 120. It's quite a prohibitive price on the quarter. I think she'll be easy enough for the first couple of rounds, but I probably can't get to plus 120, so I'm not going to have a bet in that. I think they're on the other side of the draw, on the bottom half of this draw, I like Zhengqin Wen, but my bet would probably be Linda Naskova, who actually took out Gauff in Madrid, if you remember. It was on Gauff in the quarter, and Noskova took her out from 4-1 double break down in the third, came back and beat her. Just that big kind of loose game, going for her shots, hitting lines, and Noskova can do that, and she's looked better this season than she has, let's say in Oz at the start of the year, where I thought she looked quite poor. So yes, she lost to Kirstea in Rome, but I think she has done great work in Madrid prior to that. So yeah, Noskova 10-1, I'm semi-tempted, and I might end up betting that one. So that would be probably the only one that I'm interested in here. I wonder what people complain if I had another sip of tea before we go on to quarter three. Okay, that was the last sip. It's getting cold. So quarter three, let me get it up on the screen here as well. Bottom half is a bit more loaded, as we're just about to hear and find out. So in quarter three, you have Elina Svitolina, obviously the Rome champ from last week. That Rome title, I was low-ish on Svitolina, and then I watched basically a lot of her play in that second week, and she came through Rybakina, Iga Swiatek, and Coco Gauff back to back to back to win the tournament, quarter, semis and final. Like, that's massively impressive, and it wasn't a fluke. She did it with her usual game style, but she's become a bit more aggressive, and her forehand is heavy and she looks great. She was quite the counterpuncher all the way through her career, but now I feel like she's stepping up and trying to take the game to her opponent, and it's serving her well. So she's in a good spot and certainly has to be respected here. Obviously, last week we had the Goff Svitolina named the finalist market winner at 80 to 1, so plus 8,000 on the podcast, and that was really pleasing. But she went on and beat Goff then in the final, who I was on at 10 to 1 to win the tournament. And you know, that 10 to 1 last week, now all of a sudden she's 6 to 1 to win the French Open. So yeah, it was an annoying one to miss out on. But bottom line here is the top section of quarter 3 is the easier section to be in, and that's where Svitolina is. The two girls she is likely to have to beat are Clara Tauson, who has been semi-poor and riddled with injury, and then the other one is Belinda Bencic. So, you know, Bencic could be a dark horse here. She's going to play a qualifier first, then Katie McNally second, who's probably also another dark horse that I wouldn't mind taking a look at. And now that I'm talking about McNally, I wouldn't actually mind just seeing what price she is to win the second quarter. See, could you get a really big price? I'm looking for the US flag. I don't know why they don't have the flag beside her, but she's 35 to 1, which is not bad. So I don't actually mind that. But let's move on. The bottom half of quarter 3 is where it starts to get really loaded. So you've got Marta Kostyuk in there, Madrid champ. She skipped Rome after Madrid, which I thought made sense. She had a tough week in Madrid and went all the way to the final. It was a massive mental thing for her to go and win a Masters 1000. And then she also pulled out this week in Strasbourg, where she was meant to play. She cited a hip injury, which I thought was interesting because I'm looking at her practicing on Chatrier on Monday of this week, and she's running around like a greyhound. There's no problem with her. So she's obviously not injured. She doesn't have an injury concern, but that was her reason for pulling out of Strasbourg. And I was wondering why players can't just cite Grand Slam prep as a valid reason to pull out. I don't know what that's about, but she is here, and she's found herself in a relatively tough part of the draw. Her likely kind of tough match, she'll probably play Leila Fernandez in the round 3, but then in round 4, the other two big names here are Elena Ostapenko and a girl you might know, Iga Swiatek. So it's a tough quarter. The way I see this, I'm just I get happy when I see Ostapenko and Swiatek beside each other in the draw. So Ostapenko is a former French Open champion. Iga Swiatek is the best clay courter of this generation by a long way. I think she's won 4 Roland Garros. I should have checked, but I think it's 4. And she's obviously been amazing the last couple of years. But that head-to-head is like popcorn when it comes to a tennis fan. It's 6-0 to Ostapenko. Swiatek has never been able to lay a racket on her. It's just a matchup that does not suit the pole. It really suits Ostapenko. She comes in and just goes for it, takes it on. Whatever way the ball sits up from the Swiatek spin, it just sits into Ostapenko's hitting zone, and she's always been able to get by her. There's obviously a mental element to it now as well. It's like beating someone 6 times in a row. It starts to, you start to have doubts, and doubts are creeping in. Can I actually beat this girl? I'm sure Swiatek knows she can beat her and thinks she can beat her and will back herself to beat her and will be a massive favourite to win the match if it transpires, which it probably will. Just looking at the draws for both of them, Teresina Valentova is probably, in Ostapenko's second round, the one that might scupper the matchup. But Ostapenko was great in Rome. So if she's coming in form, week off this week, rested, coming to a happy place for her where she won the French Open back in whatever year, 2020 or I forget, 2021 maybe. She came back and beat Simona Halep, I think, from a set down in the final. And that was like peak Halep. So that's how good Ostapenko is. She's not that player, I would say, anymore, but she's a player who can beat Swiatek, and Swiatek will be disgusted to have seen this draw. To be 8 spots away in the draw from Jelena Ostapenko and have to play her in your round 3. So that is horrible. So let's say Swiatek gets there, the matchup transpires with Ostapenko. Swiatek has to get through Ostapenko, then she has to get through Marta Kostyuk in her next round, just to get to the quarterfinal against almost certainly, or very likely, Elina Svitolina. So she would have to beat her nemesis, 0-6 nemesis. Then she would have to beat the Madrid champion. Then she would have to beat the Rome champion, just to make it to a semi-final. And this, she's favourite, plus 200 or whatever she is in the outright. She should not be favourite. I was on a pod a week or two ago saying that she deserved to be favourite after what she was doing halfway through Rome, especially with Sabalenka losing so early. And it made sense at the time. She didn't have this draw at the time. This draw is rotten. Look, draws are only on paper and they don't always transpire and they don't always play out the way that you expect. It could easily be Leila Fernandez instead of Kostyuk. It could be Bencic instead of Svitolina. But as of right now, on paper, I can't see Swiatek deserving to be favourite given that matchup. Like getting through just all of those to potentially come up against Rybakina, to potentially come up against Sabalenka or Goff. It could really be 5 tough matches in a row for her. So that's a rotten draw for Iga Swiatek. Ostapenko will be delighted with that draw. She relishes that. That'll be on Chatrier. Iga Swiatek would be looking for that in the daytime, in the heat of Paris in the summer. She would absolutely want it to be in the day, and Ostapenko probably would want the opposite of whatever Swiatek wants. But I can't wait for that. That's got a popcorn match written all over it. In terms of bets for this quarter, like Swiatek is minus 120 for the quarter, which is absolute joke. It's a crazy price for all the reasons that I just said. So she's a very, very easy swerve here. There's an outsider that I'm going to take, and then I'm going to take Ostapenko, and then I'm going to take Svitolina. So Ostapenko is 27 to 1 on FanDuel, which I think is very fair. I think if Ostapenko is playing well and she's in her form and hits her groove, like if she was playing Kostyuk 2 or 3 tournaments ago, it wouldn't have been a massive price to go and beat Kostyuk. And now all of a sudden Kostyuk's 5 to 1 for the quarter and Ostapenko is 5 times the price or whatever almost. So I like Ostapenko there at 27 to 1. I'm going to back that. I'm going to take Svitolina at 11 to 4 with DraftKings. She's plus 275, almost 3 to 1 to win the quarter. And I like that because she's coming on the opposite side of where the trouble is. Like, the likelihood is the only tough match that Svitolina is going to have this side of the quarterfinal is Belinda Bencic in the 4th round. And Bencic could obviously lose before then too. So I like Svitolina and I'm going to back that at plus 275. And in the long shot that I'm going to have a go at, purely for a bit of fun, and it's going to be small stakes, Anna Bondar 150 to 1. So yeah, whatever that is, plus 1500. She beats Svitolina in Madrid. And then the next round she went on and took Mirandrieva to 7-6 in the 3rd. So she's a real good player, high level player. I like Bondar, another Hungarian. She's probably going to be out in round 1 to Svitolina, and I probably hope she is out in round 1 to Svitolina, but I just think the price is a little bit bigger than it should be. I think it probably should be 80 to 1 or something like that. So getting 150s there, I'm going to have a small bet. She's my dark horse for this section. I might be tempted by Katie McNally. To be honest, I kind of half missed her in the draw, and I need to go back and double check some of her prices. I saw 35 to 1 at FanDuel, but I want to check the other books and see what we can get there. But McNally at double the price Bencic is, I don't mind that at all. She's had a nice preparation and a nice season, and again she's in the same side there as Svitolina, so McNally is another interesting one. To sum up the quarter, very easy to swerve Iga Swiatek. I'm going to have a small stake on Anna Bondar, and then my 2 main bets are going to be Ostapenko and Svitolina. And that brings us to the last quarter of the Ladies French Open draw, and it is loaded, maybe loaded, not quite loaded, but it's a tough quarter. So, and it's kind of the same as the previous one in that there's 1 or 2 big names in the top section of this, and then we've got Rybakina down in the bottom with a couple of dangers to her, but ultimately I would expect Rybakina to be able to come through here. So Mirandrieva is the 8th seed here, and she has a pretty nice draw all the way through to the 4th round, and in that 4th round I think she's going to play my girl Karolina Muchova. I think Muchova is the 10 seed. Yes, she is. So both of those have got pretty nice runs to the 4th round to play each other. But then it's a killer match in the 4th round. Like that's going to be the best match of the day, whatever day that's on, if it transpires. So Andreeva's coming in. Look, I think Andreeva deserves a ton of respect. I'm not like her biggest fan or anything. I'm a massive fan of Muchova, but I think Andreeva deserves a ton of respect coming in. She won Linz, then she went to Stuttgart, made a semi-final, then she went to Madrid, made a final in singles and doubles, and then she made a quarter-final in Rome where she had to be tired. So she hasn't been out before the quarter-final in any tournament this clay season yet, and that's massive respect. And then Muchova, she made a well, the first thing to say here is that she's a former French Open runner-up. She served for the title in the third set. I forget, but I think she served for it at 5-4, and she didn't win it. But yeah, broke herself basically, if I remember correctly, and I was on her in that tournament, so that always brings up bad memories. But she's a former runner-up, so like I don't think clay is her best surface, but she's made the final of the French Open before and almost beat Peak Swiatek. She made the final in Stuttgart this season. She skipped Madrid and then she went and lost in round 1 in Rome. So like that was disappointing. I was on her in Rome, and these things can happen where you go and like you play a great tournament and then you take a week off, and you know you're coming in. Actually, it was 2 weeks off because Madrid is a 2-week tournament. And you're coming in thinking I'm fresh here, I'm great, and all of a sudden you just realize, shit, I'm out of touch. I haven't played competitive tennis in 2.5 weeks. I wish I had like entered or just been more sharp and physically ready. So she went out and just lost the match. That can happen. I am not overlooking her, and I'm not saying that she is someone who should be dismissed based on that result in Rome and the fact she didn't play Madrid. Her real form to me is the Karolina Muchova we saw in Stuttgart. I think she's an amazing player. I think she's got crazy good hands. I've spoken it before, but she's a top 5 ELO rated player as well. So like that's where you get a lot of credit for the level of competition you're beating and playing against. So she can do it. She can beat anybody on her day. Like I say, I expect that matchup to materialise. Mira Andreeva will be a favourite in that matchup, but she won't be a short favourite. I think she'd be like a $1.70 type thing. And the pricing doesn't reflect what I think the match price will be between those two. So let's see. And then on the bottom of this, you've got a couple of girls like Jasmine Paolini is the 13th seed. She's going to be out early. I think she could be out in round 1 to Diana Yastremska, who just won the Paris Challenger last week. Sorry, it was the Parma Challenger last week in Italy. You've got like Emma Raducanu, Solana Sierra, you've got Sarona Kirstea, and then a couple of interesting ones down the bottom even with Rybakina. You've got Hailey Baptiste. Now Hailey Baptiste is obviously the player, the girl, the American who took out Arina Sabalenka in Madrid, like massively unexpected, and she was amazing that day. If anyone hasn't seen that match, to go back and watch the highlights. I think she saved 6 match points and she ended up winning it on her first match point, but just amazing power and play. So she's a big player and like she has a ton of power, but she comes up against Barbora Krejcikova in round 1, and Krejcikova just lost in the Parma Challenger final to Yastremska at the weekend. So she's coming in prime too, and like, oh god, again I should have looked it up, but I'm pretty certain Krejcikova, did she either win the French Open or she made the final of the French Open? I think she won it. I have to check now. I wouldn't be able to sit here and ask myself, did she win it or didn't she? Yeah, she won it. Like she won the French Open in 2021 and she won Wimbledon in 2024. Like amazing. And people look at her and like just look straight past her and never think about her. But she's a great player, and if she's just coming in off, 4 clay wins and a loss in the final of that tournament in Parma, like, she's not to be overlooked. I don't expect her to go and win the quarter here or anything, but I think she's a danger the same way I think that Diana Yastremska is also a danger. So there's enough good players down here that someone's going to give Rybakina a tough go of it. Starodubtseva's in there too. That's the girl who made the final in Charleston at the start of the clay season. But ultimately I think Rybakina will get through here. Rybakina is a 2-time quarter finalist at the French, never been past the quarters. She's quite likely to come up against, either Barbora Krejcikova or Hailey Baptiste. I backed Baptiste a couple of weeks ago. Actually, that day she beat Sabalenka in Madrid. I backed her at 200s for the French, but she's kind of 200 still based on the draw here and the fact she hasn't done a ton since. So I'm not necessarily recommending an outright bet on her, but her ceiling is certainly there. But that's going to be that's one of the, actually for me, that is the best round 1 matchup, Hailey Baptiste against Barbora Krejcikova, and I'll certainly be watching that one. My bet in the bottom quarter is Karolina Muchova. Probably nobody too surprised. She's 7-1. Like, Mira Andreeva is about plus 150, plus 160, and then you're getting 7-1 on plus 700 on Karolina Muchova, and that gap is just so far wrong. Like I said, I think it's somewhere in the region of probably minus 130, minus 140 Andreeva money line price against Muchova. As of right now, I think that's kind of my view or my ballpark. And obviously it depends, if one of them comes in red hot form, that will change. But that's kind of how I see it. So yeah, we've been through all the draw. I have a couple of bets, like outright bets. I actually don't have a lot at all, to be honest, and certainly like it's my first slam here on the pod, but like I do a lot of my betting during a Grand Slam when the tournament is on, when the books are revising their prices each day after play, and you'll get tons of value there and bets and different markets. So for now, I have a relatively limited book of bets. I already went through the quarter bets and I didn't have a ton of those. I'm going to bet, you can bet Yelena Ostapenko at 125 to 1 to reach the final with Bet365, so that's a lovely price. I'm certainly going to bet that. Like, she's 150 to 1 best price to win the tournament, and you can get 125s to make the final, so I'm going to bet that. I'm going to bet Mukova at 45 to 1 with Bet Rivers. That was the best price I saw on the outright. You can get 40 to 1 pretty generally, but I'm going to bet the 45s. And I'm also going to bet her to reach the final at FanDuel, which is basically half of that. You can get the 22s. And I could certainly hear a case that that's a better bet than the outright. It depends who she will play in the final, but she would be an underdog to Sabalenka. She would also be an underdog to Goff if she did make the final. So I'm going to bet the 22s to reach the final for Mukova, and you can get 150 to 1 on Hailey Baptiste to reach the final with 365, so that's another no-brainer. Small stake one for me. The only other bet I have is the one I like the most, and it's 100 to 1 shot, and that is a name the finalist market, Coco Gauff against Karolina Mukova, 100 to 1. I think it's significantly shorter. I think both of them have a great chance, both of them for different reasons. I love Goff's draw. Mukova doesn't necessarily have an easy draw, but I think she can come out here and surprise some people with her level who are probably writing her off based on the last tournaments. So that's all for now, but I'm certainly going to put up reels. I'm going to put up posts, stories, Instagram, YouTube. Please follow along. It's a Grand Slam. You're all going to get friends who don't follow tennis from one end of the year to the other asking who you're betting in the tennis, what do you like in the tennis. Send them the pod. I'd love to have people tuning in and listening and interacting on social media. I do appreciate it, so like and subscribe, please. That would be very much appreciated. And if you enjoy listening on Spotify or wherever, if you watch on YouTube, just send to your friends and give them the chance and spread it around a little bit. I would certainly appreciate that. I will be back tomorrow evening. I'm going to record the men's version of this, so just straight into quarter 1, quarter 2, 3 and 4, the men's plus the bets, and then wrap it up, and that'll be 2 pods done before the tournament starts on Sunday. And then I will certainly do like a midweek one, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, and another one maybe next weekend, just with further bets or how the tournament's progressing or any big news or storylines coming out of Roland Garros. But certainly can't wait. Thanks for listening, and chat to you tomorrow.